U.S. political discourse has become extremely dumbed down. If you looked at political debates from 30 or 40 years ago versus today, you will see that both parties are now communicating at a much lower IQ level. The substance of what is being said has become weaker and weaker. The dumbed down rhetoric is becoming a greater and greater percentage of the total. And that is why nobody ever talks about the government becoming more efficient. Leftists want to increase taxes. They never talk about making the government more efficient. They just talk about increasing taxes in order to pay for roads and bridges, even though roads and bridges and such consume only 10 or 20% of government spending. We did have roads and bridges before there was any income tax in 1913, by the way. We also had universities, a military, and a judicial system before 1913. Republicans, in some ways, are even worse because they only talk about lowering the headline tax rate. They never talk about tax simplicity because tax complexity wastes 40% of all taxes collected due to the complexity of enforcement, filing, and the ambiguity about whether something was legal or not. There are thousands upon thousands of tax lawyers in the United States making big money when that profession should not even exist. The tax code should be so simple that there should not be tax lawyers by the thousands in a society. But they only want to lower the headline tax rate to get the maximum easy vilification by the other side for the least impact. They also never talk about making the government more efficient. The public sector in the United States is extremely inefficient compared to the private sector. Look at this chart over here. In 2000, not that long ago, 2000, many people watching this are old enough to remember 2000. The U.S. federal budget was $1.85 trillion. Now, 2024, it is $6.9 trillion. $6.9 trillion. That is a huge increase. That is a 3.5 times increase. That is a much faster rate of increase than the rest of the economy. 1.85 trillion became 6.9 trillion in just 24 years, and a larger percentage of the entire economy. Yet the quality of government services has gone down. This is one thing the left and right probably would both agree on, that the quality of government services has gone down despite the higher budget, and the quality of American society is worse than it was in 2000. Almost everyone would agree about that. Yet nobody talks about making the government more efficient. Why can't we say, let's make the government 40% more efficient? Just 40%. It would still be less efficient than the private sector, but the gap would be not as large as it is now. 40% more efficient. Most of the outdated objectives of both the mainstream right and mainstream left in the United States would be easily met, because at a government that is 40% more efficient, you could have the same taxes, you could have the same taxes collected but much more services, or you could have the same level of services for dramatically lower taxes. So both left and right have a new amount of wiggle room to get their basic objectives met. Now, I say right to refer to Republicans. There's actually no right in America to speak of. The Republicans are a pretend opposition party. And if you watched WWF wrestling as a child, like I did, this is very obvious to you. Republicans are the designated heels who pretend to fight back but are already pre-scheduled to lose and surrender. The heel is a necessary part of the entire theatrical production. I would love to vote for a political party that actually stood for small, efficient government and personal responsibility, but there is no political party like that in the United States at this time. There's a party that pretends to be that, but there is no actual party that fights for those things. But nobody talks about the government becoming more efficient. Every corporation always talks about increasing their corporate efficiency, increasing earnings per share, getting more output per employee, increasing return on equity, things like that. But nobody ever talks about the government implementing even a fraction of that philosophy. Think about this. Elon Musk took over Twitter. He eliminated 90% of the employees, and the performance of the company improved. Imagine the same concept applied to government. And I want every eliminated government employee, if they're good at what they do, to make twice as much in the private sector. I want them to make twice as much in the private sector. I want the government, however, to shrink down to being a utility to the extent that it is seen as something that should become more efficient over time through technology. But nobody talks about that at all. That is why most US political content is extremely boring, because everything they're talking about is far, far, far behind the realities of the times, very dumbed down, and is nothing more than an entertainment genre and reality TV meant for people who think they're too smart to watch reality TV or to watch professional sports, but ultimately they're not, because they're watching political content, which is very much the same thing. Thanks for watching.